夠法定人數，亦都夠時。
Members, we have a quorum, and it's time, so I call to order the meeting. Up to the last meeting, we have considered 43 items. The total funding amount was $1,140 million, and the term for capital projects, the total funding was $99.7594 billion. Today we're going to consider two projects. The total funding cost would be $820.02 million. And if all the funding applications approved, then we would have approved a total of 45 projects. And the total funding amount would be $104.8361 billion. And for a funding amount related to capital projects, that would be $105.796 billion. If I remind members, if there are any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to the items under discussion today, members must declare interest in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure. In accordance with Rule 84 of the Rules of Procedure, members may have to vote accordingly on matters with direct pecuniary interest. Now, first item, PWSC 2003 to 1424, 96WC, water supply to Pak Shek Kok reclamation area Tai Po Stage 2. Members are invited to approve the upgrading of 96WC to Category A at an estimated cost of $162.7 million in money of the day prices. This is for laying water mains to provide adequate freshwater supply to the developments in the Pak Shek Kok reclamation area. The project was considered by the development panel on the 28th of May 2013. The deliberations of the panel are tabled for members' consideration. Attending the meeting, we have Mr. Ma Li Tak, Director of Water Supplies, and Mr. Leung Wing Lim. Any questions, please? If there are no questions, then I'll put the item to a vote. Those in favor, hands up, please. Those against, hands up, please. I believe the item has the support of members, so the item is approved. Next item. Paper number PWSC 2013-14-17. The item is to recommend the upgrading of the project to Category at an estimated cost of $657.5 million in money of the day prices for the development of the Vocational Training Council International Culinary College at Pok Fu Lam. The panel on education was consulted on the 14th of January. Members supported the funding proposal. The deliberations of that panel meeting are tabled. Attending today's meeting, we have Ms. Michelle Lee, Deputy Secretary for Education, Ms. Pak Vin Yong, Principal Assistant Secretary for Education, Mr. Leung Kam Pui, Chief Technical Advisor of the Architectural Services Department, Mr. Gary Au, Senior Assistant Executive Director, Vocational Training Council, and Dr. Lee Kin Wang, Head of Vocational Training Council on Essays, Health and Safety Matters. Mr. Wong Kok Heng? Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I support the paper, but I have some questions. The site for the International Culinary College, as you know, there are many monuments there. There's the old dairy farm sheds, staff quarters, there are historic buildings, and so on. So my question is, as you design the International Culinary College, would you also consider how you could revitalize all these old buildings in the vicinity the best you could, because they are part of our collective memory? Thank you. ASD, please. This is VTC project, so perhaps it's better for the VTC to answer the question. Yes, VTC, please. If I could give some background information first. Thank you, Mr. Wong, for your question. Yes, as Mr. Wong pointed out, the siting of the ICC is that is next to many monuments. So we have to consider three aspects. First, we have engaged heritage consultant to conduct a heritage assessment, especially the impact of the development of this college on the historic buildings. And secondly, as we designed the college, we will take into account the historic buildings in the vicinity, like the appearance, the color, and structure of the historic buildings. This will all be taken into account in the design of our college. This is to make sure that our college is compatible with the cluster of historic buildings. And then on February 2013, we briefed the Antiquities Advisory Board on our proposal. They supported our design proposal. Perhaps I could invite VTC colleagues to give you some information now. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, what we've done in terms of design has been mentioned just now, but if I may just add 2 points. There are some historic buildings in the vicinities. Because of that, we have tried to reduce the massing as far as possible. That is, we don't want the building to be too tall. At the same time, we want to leave some setback. That means we won't build to the perimeter of the site. And we've asked our heritage consultant to look at the whole area for us, and we're going to do a heritage trail. And as Mr. Wong Kok pointed out, that's the old dairy farm cow shed there, so we could give some information on the history of the historic buildings in the area. And that's what we propose to do. Mr. Wong Kok, thank you. In revitalizing or preserving the historic buildings, when your project is completed, please put signs in the appropriate locations, so that when people go there, visit the area, they know, oh, this is the car shed and this is another building and so on. So that's just some signs to give such information. Dr. Kenneth Chen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Civic Party supports this funding application. At the Development Panel and the Education Panel, I raised my concern about the impact of this development on the historic buildings nearby. I'm glad that the VTC has engaged a consultant to give advice. Now, I see that you have earmarked $6.2 million for the interpretation area and a historic observation point. And I think it's good that all these places will be open 24 hours a day. That's good. But I have a question about the interpretation area. Now, outside the building site, there is some sort of an alley, so that's the layout, I think. So can I find out more? Do you just plan to put a few indication signs or direction signs, or are you going to give some brief illustration of the buildings and who would be managing the places? Would there be more activities other than these signs? So I want to know what you're going to do. Are you just going to put the direction signs there and that's it, and you won't do nothing more? Or are you actually going to provide some activities and so on? So I would like more information here. Thank you, Dr. Chen, for the question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course, we won't just leave the signs to weather the rain and shine. And we want to make good use of these historic buildings, because that would actually enhance the characteristic of the ICC. So we haven't come to the final design yet. We don't know yet how we're going to make good use of these historic buildings. Now, of course, in the Central and Western District, there is a Dr. San Heritage Trail. That's more or less the direction we're going. But perhaps internally, own brainstorming, maybe we could accommodate more multimedia items, even if they're outdoor. And our initial assessment is that we could achieve something like that. It would, in other words, it would be something multimedia. It's not just some historic information on a plaque or something. But as I said, we haven't yet finished our final design. Now, why are we saying that the area will be open round the clock to visitors? Because this is a project supported by the district, so we want to make sure it's a project for the district, and the management and maintenance would be for the VTC. Now, we haven't yet come to a final design, as I said, but we will certainly put in effort to make sure the display and everything will be done properly, so that the visitors could enjoy the place. Well, I like that answer, Mr. Chairman. I hope you will follow up properly. We don't just want the signs and put there and no one comes and visit, and it would be such a waste, because there are so many historic buildings there. They are very interesting. Now, the college, of course, is to serve an education purpose. It's an international culinary college. So do you not have to consider simultaneous interpretation systems in there? I don't know if it's in the design. I see you have a language lab, but what about other facilities to facilitate international exchanges? Or maybe students, teachers coming from other places, they could come here and they could students and teachers could have discussions and so on. Who's to answer the question? Thank you, Dr. Chen, for your question. I can tell you what we're doing now, and then you can see how we're going to operate in future. In the Pak Shek Kok building, we have the Chinese culinary school, and we also have the international exchange center. So we do have a lot of international exchanges. There are chefs from the mainland and other parts of the world to come and do demonstrations. So we've always been providing simultaneous interpretation services. We don't need a proper simultaneous interpretation room as such, because when people are cooking, for instance, that's not what we need. But then we will certainly have an interpreter accompanying the chefs as they do the demonstration. So when they talking, then we have interpretation services arranged. So certainly we appreciate the importance of interpretation in future. Of course, there will be international exchanges, and we'll be inviting celebrity chefs who come and help us with some functions, so there should be a problem with interpretation. As for the language lab, it's really for the training of students, because apart from culinary arts, language training is important as well. Mr. Low. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm more for this project. If we could have world-class international culinary college in Hong Kong, that would be great for young people in Hong Kong. It will help to promote our status too as a culinary center. Now, greening, energy conservation, green and recycle features, $4.8 million. Then drainage services and so on, there's also some set aside. Now, there are 2 points. I think for International Culinary College, of course, it's important that they handle kitchen waste and grease and all properly. Now, for kitchen waste, do you have any facilities to deal with the kitchen waste? Or, so what are the solutions you are planning? Can you please explain that? Now, for restaurants, kitchens, oil and grease treatment is important. If you go to a 5-star hotel in Hong Kong, you go to the basement and you look at the grease traps and so on, very often there's such a foul smell. They don't really do a proper job with grease treatment. So I think the college should serve a demonstration purpose, both on dealing with kitchen waste and grease. Who's to answer that? Ms. Lee? Thank you, Mr. Low, for your comments. Now, in the design of the college, the VTC attaches great importance to the processing of kitchen waste and grease. Apart from the facilities mentioned in the paper, they have a grease trap, grease drain, so that they will make sure that grease won't find a way into the drainage pipe. And then for kitchen waste, they will be dealt with as source, so they would reduce the amount of kitchen waste generated for disposal.
I want to thank you for your question. Besides what's already been mentioned, in terms of managing the grease, we've used static electricity hoods, electrostatic precipitators, so that the exhaust will already separate the grease from the exhaust, so there won't be the situation you described above. So we're very concerned about this as well. It's very important in terms of our teaching as to how to control the environment. So we do want to teach the students how we can use facilities to control some of the exhaust and some of the grease that comes about. Okay, any other question? Mr. Ma, please. Thank you, Chairman. I remember that we were discussing this in the education panel. I had stated that I approve of this item and support it. At the point, I stated that there are some historic buildings nearby, and I think you're going to have an interpretation area there. My suggestion is that the VTC can consider whether to do it themselves or let others do it, to have some sites for some sort of attraction involving food, so that the graded buildings can be a supplement to the ICC. It's better than to have an observance site now. I don't know who would actually go there and just to see those buildings. That's not very realistic. If there is some food to attract them, then perhaps at night, and there may be more parking facilities, we can make this into an attraction. I wonder if you will consider this. But these papers do not respond to my questions then, so I would like to ask administration, will you consider this? Mr. Oh, please. Thank you, Mr. Ma. I want to explain that it's a good suggestion. Now, the graded historic buildings nearby is managed by the performance school. But I want to supplement that. We have a very good neighborly relationship between them, and we do cooperate them. When we're talking with the district councils, we're talking, will we consider to have such activities? So we do want to support community development. But the thing is, we are not actually running a restaurant. We are running a school. But we have undertaken that if the community has some activities, so if it's possible, we will support them. And sometimes in terms of operating these restaurants, a lot of times we need the help of a lot of students. So in the past, we have some concerns as to whether or not our students can handle it, because there may be, in terms of manpower, or whether we can support an operation method that is similar to the restaurants. Now, I don't think that the VTC should be operating these attractions, but I think you should try to make an effort to allow these historic buildings to be used in these ways. So I think, of course, I think you should need to find professionals. Now, if this were to happen, then we can revitalize the area in a more unique and interesting way. So I think overall it can improve the image of the ICC. Of course, the question is who should take the proactive action? Should the VTC do it so they can control the site? So I don't think that you need to run it per se. Mr. Ao, I want to thank you for the suggestion of Mr. Ma. I think we will need to talk with the Performance Institute, the Academy of Performing Arts that is within the Bethany. Even now, they have some weddings. So we can discuss with them whether we can cooperate them on certain activities. I think that if you can control the management of these historic buildings, of course, it'll be a lot more flexible for you. That is, in terms of transportation or parking spaces. So I think if you can have an overall management power, I think it will be better. Otherwise, if you just give an observance tower or observance place for them, I don't think it will be very attractive. That people will not go there just to look at the historic buildings. So I hope that in terms of management, you will do a better job. Dr. Fernando Zheng. Thank you, Chairman. Of course, I support the ICC. If there are more training opportunities like this in Hong Kong, then it can help a lot of young people to have good careers. Now, last time in the panel, I've already mentioned, but I don't think there are responses to my concerns, is that in terms of now, of course, we want to develop a world-class culinary institution. I hope you will also consider that there are some young people who have special needs, for example, who are disabled. A lot of times they actually have a lot of talent in these areas in terms of working with the hands. So I hope that in terms of courses, you won't just go for the top and neglect those who still have ability to let them learn. Now I want to mention that the CCTI has these problems. A lot of students who have special needs or young people cannot enter and learn from there. So I hope that you will prepare some courses for this. In terms of design, now it's not very clear from the photos, from what I see. Last time we also mentioned that if the outer wall, if it's a very reflective, that it will be quite different in terms of the nearby buildings, in terms of overall environment. So I hope that it will not be used, reflective material will not be used. So it may actually impact the buildings across. And I hope that the building will be as open as possible. Now, if, for example, there are restaurants in the institute or maybe hotels, I know you already have a hotel, like the training hotel in the CCTI. I don't know if you have similar facilities. I hope it will be open, because right now the CCTI is on a membership basis, so outer citizens can't just go in and eat a meal. So if this is a public area and this is a training restaurant, I think that you should have at least a small part, or at least have some designated time where you will allow citizens to go there freely. A lot of times citizens hear that, oh, CCTI has food, but when they go there, they can't eat there. So I hope that you will change this. In terms of the ICC, it will allow for public participation. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Ao. Chairman, thank you, Dr. Fernando Zheng's question. As has been said last time, now today, The VTC has received a lot of different students that have special needs. If you're talking about CCTI or the Hospitality Training Institute, you have pointed out the question is that a lot of times when we are admitting students, we're not really needing people who are good academically. We want them to be good at that particular job or skill. Of course, they must have a passion for cooking. But a lot of times, if they are going out to the real world to work in restaurants, there may be some dangers involved. So if they fulfill the standards, so even if they have special needs, so perhaps they have no problems in terms of cooking. So it's not that they won't be allowed to study in here in the ICC. I think you don't have to be too concerned here. I remember you said last time about the outer wall. Would it be reflective? Would affect the residents? I want to emphasize that we are concerned as well. So that's why when we're consulting with residents, we've talked about this. And I've talked over this with our construction consultants, and we will use a non-reflective material to use the outer wall. So something that's sort of like a mirror effect will not happen. In terms of restaurants' openness, I hope you will understand that we do have problems, difficulties here. We have to be concerned that this is a school, and it's not a restaurant like those outside. We do have hygienic concerns, and in terms of capacity, because students need to train. If we do open it in a big scale, that will be difficult for us. But during the consultation with the DC, we did say that we will support activities. So maybe a special times for like an open day, or perhaps the DC will have events. We will want to participate so that the public can use our facilities. Mr. Tony Te. Thank you, Chairman. I support this endeavor, but I'm looking at the enclosures, and I don't think there are enough information there. But in terms of this site, there's some buildings nearby. Now, in terms of the design, is it easy for pedestrians to access? Now, can it more be done? From what I see in the enclosures, that there is barrier-free access to the ICC. But will you consider, for example, if you go to Bethany, will there be similar facilities there? Can you talk about this, actually? Because I'm not too clear from looking at the enclosures, especially to enable pedestrians when they go from Pak Shek Road. So after they have alighted from the cars, how can they go there? So that it will be. So overall, the facility, how does it help pedestrians? Thank you. Mr. Oh, yes, thank you, Mr. Te. In terms of pedestrians, you don't have to be worried, because if otherwise we wouldn't have an interpretation area. If you look at enclosure 2, now I don't know if it's very clear, but there should be no barriers for pedestrians. Once they enter our road, and then it will be very easy for them to go to even to Bethany. Now, if you're saying that if you alight at Pak Shek Road, can you walk there? Now, I think there'll be some technical problems, because there's a wall over there, so and we have looked at whether we should have an entrance or exit there. But we asked the residents over there, but they don't want us to affect the wall. So we think that most citizens who come here will use the original road here. So I do want to emphasize that in terms of pedestrians walking, there will be no barriers. It will be a very comfortable walk for them. Because I'm looking at enclosure 1. There's a blue area It's a new road. I'm looking at the design. What I feel is that it's emphasizing to let cars use it. But what about pedestrians? Chairman, I want to emphasize. Perhaps I wasn't being clear. Yes, there will be a pedestrian walkway. There will be no problem. No supplements, thank you. Ms. Emily Lau. Thank you, Chairman. I do support this item as well. I want to ask 2 questions. One is about training for people who are disabled. I know you're doing this as well, and I hope that you will do more in this area. When we're going to Disneyland as well as Ocean Park earlier, Ocean Park has emphasized that there are some very capable disabled people who are cooking and being employed at Ocean Park. So I hope that you give us more information in this regard. Now, looking at enclosure 2, this is artist impression. Now, I think it's very interesting, and I hope that these buildings will be interesting. Now, there's a building in Changquan-O. I don't know if it's yours. A lot of residents say it's a very beautiful. So I want to ask that, is this, what we see here, is that the building that's going to be, or will you have some sort of contest for the actual building later on? Thank you, Ms. Lowe. So this design is a relatively advanced stage. Perhaps I want to say is that this design is a concept. It's a salt crystal. So after we thought a lot of different ideas, we found that salt is an essential ingredient in the cuisine all over the world. So we have thought about a lot of how we can take a salt crystal to come up with this design. So I don't think within the time allowed, we can't have a contest. But we have consulted with a lot of different places, and we've received support in terms of this design because it is quite novel. And can you mention about for disabled people? Yes. So as I've said before, because within VTC there are 3 training centers for disabled people, and some of these courses are for culinary training. If you go to in terms of ICC, we have not developed any courses, so we don't have any concrete information. But one of the most important missions of VTC is to give training needs to different people, including disabled people. So that's why we do have special centers for them. So I think we'll go back and see what kind of courses can we specially target disabled people. Because talking about disabled people, they may have different levels of capabilities. So we have to think about special courses for them. Now, Chairman, of course it's great that you have these courses, but you do have to think about how they can have career opportunities afterwards. So perhaps you can cooperate with Disneyland, Ocean Park, or other food enterprises, and to let them know that they have these capabilities. Now, of course, business owners just want to hire employees who can help them, but they also want to have a corporate social responsibility. So I think you should do more in this aspect. Mr. Frankie Yik. Now, there was a questions about the observance area to let them look at the buildings. Now, I don't think that's enough. You're already spending around 600 million. Can you do a bit more to perhaps do some animation to show how the old cowshed operates, or how Bethany used to the people living there was used to like. Now, even the Maritime Museum have such things, so I hope that you will consider this. Second, Mr. Kok talked about kitchen waste. I think it's a very good suggestion because these are new chefs. They must know how to deal with kitchen waste, and you don't just put everything in the same place. And some are degradable, some are non-degradable, so they should divide them. And I also do support what has been said earlier in terms of the CCTI. Now, we have an ICC, so we have different types of cuisine. Of course, I understand that students have to be there and learn every night. But perhaps when they are closer to graduation, maybe 2 nights out of the week, they can have some real-life training opportunities and open for citizens to go there and try the food. I hope you will consider this. Okay, I hope the administration will consider this.
Mr. Michael Tan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I don't think anyone could oppose this project. This is about diversification of the industrial base in Hong Kong. We want to promote diversified development. Well, we've been talking about it in policy addresses for years, but we haven't actually done anything. And this is good for development of culinary trade, and it's good also for people who are not so academically motivated. Well, today we have no one from the Development Bureau. Okay, we train all these talents, and we have then what? What happens to them? Are they able to start their own businesses? Could they be given a hand? We have no one from the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau here. So have you actually talked to the CDB? In future, we have the Chinese Cuisine Training Institute. We're going to have the International Culinary College. That means we'll be training talents to cook all sorts of cuisine. And then what's the next step? They find their own job work. If they don't find it, maybe they become a salesman or whatever. So is that what you want? So we're talking about economic development. What about in the long run? Perhaps you could provide some public space for large public food courts. So for people who've graduated, it will give them some time to try to run a business before you've throw them in the deep end. That is, they have to go into the free market, they have to suffer the high rent and so on. So before that, before you throw them into the deep end, at least give them this transition. So have you ever considered the overall development plan with the CDB? Ms. Lee? We've actually liaised closely with various bureaux. Of course, not on all the details, but on the concept. For example, developing Hong Kong as a wine hub, because there will be a wine tasting room here. Yes, I know that. The CEDB very much supports this idea. So they've given us their full support as we consider this design. And we also want to promote Hong Kong as a gourmet's paradise. We want to promote tourism in Hong Kong, so that's why we're going to liaise closely with the CDB on the design of the ICC. As for training, there will be 2,600 places. Yeah, I know all about that. I want to know, for this particular group of talents, whether they've been trained in Chinese or Western cuisine, how, when they are trained, when they graduate, how can they launch into the market? Do you have any concrete ideas? Maybe as what I suggested, the government provides some space for a major food court. Have you considered it? Let me tell you what we've done. The training places are for secondary schools to do higher diploma courses, and all these students will have to do practice sessions. They have to work in restaurants and so on. So that will be one form of training, and then we'll also be training serving chefs. Maybe they are already in the trade, but they want to learn more. So we are not talking about fundamental knowledge. We may be training them in how they could start their own business. But we haven't come down to the details. So there's nothing then. any concrete measures to help people to start their business. You know, the various ladders. That is, they don't know how to cook, and then they learn how to cook, and then they get a job, or ultimately they start their own business. How do you help them there? Because if you can't achieve that, then it's only lip service when you talk about diversifying the economic base. And the government has to do something here. This is where I'm not happy. It seems that all the bureaus are doing their own things, but at the end, how could we turn all these efforts into market? No one knows that in the government, so what do we do? Mr. Tan or other members, you have such questions, please go to the panel on commerce and industry or the panel on education. Shouldn't there be a roundtable meeting so that we could bring economic development and education together? Let's leave it to the two panels for discussion. Yes, I think we should have discussion on the long-term measures, because we have trained so many talents, but we don't know what we do with them. Now, I hope members won't ask similar questions today. I'm being more liberal, because there are just two items. For the first item, it was voted through without hassle, and that's why I am being a bit liberal in allowing this line of questions, but it doesn't mean that in future you could raise questions on policy issues at the PWSC meetings. You know, things like when talents are trained and what we do with them, and so on, job placements and so on, because all these matters ought to be followed up in the relevant panels. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, I was outside of the room. If it might be clarified. From the plan, I can see that this building will have a modern design. And there are some old dairy farm structures that are to be preserved. Seems that they don't go together. So in terms of the appearance, would you consider something of an older or more conventional design, so that the ICC could be more compatible with the surrounding buildings? This is similar to what Mr. Ma Fong Kwok asked earlier. That's my first point. Second point, in the ICC, I do not see any restaurant. Now, this is a culinary college. There is not a restaurant. It seems rather strange. Now, even in the Kwun Tong Vocational Training Center is a small complex, but then when they have training, kitchen training or catering services training, they provide a restaurant to support the training courses. Of course, students may have to go and do actual practical work. That's another thing. But I think in the complex there ought to be a restaurant. Maybe I've overlooked it, or is it a case that you've never considered it? Mr. Au. Thank you, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, for your question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, about the design of the building and its appearance. Well, in our whole design, we have considered various elements and options. Some we've considered options like the ones mentioned by Mr. Wu Chi-wai. That is that we do something similar to the surrounding buildings, but then others may suggest that we take into account the characteristic of our own building. So in our presentation earlier, we said that we are using subtle approach to marry the various elements. So in terms of the structure, the color, the lines and shapes of the building, or the materials to be used, these are all material. Well, actually, the architect has taken account the design of the Bethany and the nearby buildings in coming with this particular design. We've actually consulted widely, including the district council, as we decided on our design. It seems that this design has much support. For the whole philosophy of the design is there is an important theme behind it. This is an international culinary college, so we need to find feature that will reflect what the building does. As I explained earlier, this building is in the shape of a salt crystal. The salt is an essential ingredient in all forms of cuisines. So that's why we are using a salt crystal as the shape of the building. Now, maybe if I could refer you to enclosure 3. Second floor plan, you see there is a training kitchen. It's not a large restaurant, of course, but as Mr. Wuchiwai pointed out, this is a place where trainees could actually practice serving meals and serving in the restaurant. So this is an important part of our training. So definitely in our college, we will take that into account in the design. So in the college itself, there will be chances for practical training. Can you point out where it is? I don't see it. Enclosure 3. There's a huge training kitchen. There are different floors. Second floor plan. Enclosure 3. Page 7 of enclosure 3, if I've counted correctly. Second floor plan.
A training restaurant.
Oh, so that's the training restaurant. It's a training restaurant. It will be open to the public. Is that the case? Well, I explained earlier, there will be limited access by the public because we face a lot of constraints, and this is a school to start with, and the restaurant is to be run by trainees. We have to consider hygiene factors and so on, so there could be limited access only to by the public. But this is a restaurant where meals will be cooked and served by trainees. So actually, that's what we do with our existing training courses. Ms. Chen Yun-han, I wonder if there's any surveillance or bugging here, because when Mr. Ao was speaking, I heard this banging noise in the background, so I don't know what's going on. Maybe we're being bugged. Anyway, Chinese Cuisine Training Institute. What Mr. Ao said is true. I'm a member of the VTC. I've been to the Chinese Cuisine Training Institute on many occasions. Trainees are very talented. In Pak Lam, Queen Mary Hospital, or Hong Kong University, people, they all go there to have meals, and the food is good. I was a VTC member, so I can say that they are doing really well there at the Chinese Cuisine Training Institute. Now, but I'd like to express 2 points of concern. You know, this is Pak Lam Road. There's some staff union of the dairy farm, and this building is within the site of the historic buildings. How can you make sure that your design could blend in? I don't know if you are doing the design, or you ask someone from outside to do it. So please answer my questions. I'll give you time to answer. So you do the design, or you commission someone to do the design? Well, when we do such project, of course, we need consultants to help us. So the design is done by consultants. Good, that's good enough. Because this is quite appealing. Is so different from the Pier 3, Pier 4. So I think this is a brilliant design. But I think you must talk to the Antiquities Advisory Board. And I understand there's a concern group. Listen to the concern group to see how you could blend your design with the cluster of historic buildings there. Now, maybe you won't allow this question, Mr. Chairman. I hope you will, though. I support this project, but I think we should have someone from the CDB here as well. Why? When young people want to become Chinese chef or Western chef, of course, there is a market for such jobs, but you have to help them get into the market. Young people want to say they are chefs. This is professional development. This is professional career. It is a dream for some of them. So how can they realize the dream, and how can CDB give their support? I want to go back to the central piers. We're asking for new designs. Now, maybe for those eating establishments, that they let these children go and work. I think it will work. I've had meals at the Chinese Cuisine Training Institute. They do cook well and they're creative. And I understand some of the graduates from the Chinese Cuisine Training Institute have gone on to work at Peninsula Hotel. They even go attend international competition. They are pride. Now, but young people here, they have a dream. They want to become chefs, but they need a hand. How do you help them to get into the market? Mr. Au, you may not be able to answer my question today. I know our financial secretary is a Scrooge. I don't suppose you could convince the financial secretary or the CDB in any way, but definitely I will support your project today. But when you come back to the finance committee, I would like to help you, but you have to answer my questions. Mr. Au, can you answer the questions, please? If not, it's fine. I will pass on. There's no point referring to the panel. It would be just routine business for them. I will have to refer this matter to the Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development, and then they will give you a reply next time, okay? Because we are just a Public Works Subcommittee. No, I'm not going to issue a threat or anything, because I like this project. But what Mr. Michael Tian said was justified. Yes, I agree. Any response, please? Thank you, Ms. Chen, for your points. Yes, we also want to make sure that graduates are able to work in the field. So that's why for all higher diploma courses, there is practice element. And practice also means they have to go and work in hotels and eating establishments as part of their training. And on the overall direction of the training courses, and increasing job opportunities, we'll definitely work with the CDB. Give me a paper afterwards, Secretariat, because I like more information before we go to the Finance Committee, because, the government just likes to do that a lot. It just tries to push things through in wishy-washy manner.
Mr. Kok, in terms of the design of this building, I think it's very novel and very unique. And you mentioned the concept of salt. But I still feel that now we can't see it, all of it now. But I think that it must be integrated with the appearances of the valuable historic buildings nearby. I think I can accept the overall design, but I do hope that the administration will take note of its integration with the surroundings. Now, you mentioned an underground access. The main use of that seems to be for transporting foods so that it can be a closed area. But should that be the only use for that linkage? So, because otherwise, I don't think underground linkages is very good. If it can be have a more open space. So, if it's not just about food safety, if we can have a way to have transportation in the open space, I think it would be better. In terms of a transportation, would you have any supporting measures for this? Because this area right now. No, will people need to go there with a public transportation, or would there be other means to go inside the complex? Because now you say there may be there'll be times when the center will be open to the public. So in those occasions, will you open the car parks, or is it that only students can use it? Those are my two questions. Thank you, Chairman. Who will answer this? Mr. Au? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. The question from Mr. Ip. In terms of the underground linkage, when we first thought about the ICC, we think that there should be linkage with the other buildings we have over there. Right now in Pak Shek, there is a Hospitality Industry Training and Development Center as well as a CCTI. We hope that they can support each other. If there are some facilities, if they can use them together, that will be better in terms of logistics. That's why when we were designing this, we hope that there will be a linkage between the buildings. In terms of the underground linkage, I think you've already mentioned the main points. It's not just for food, transportation, and that there will be a access that will not be affected by the weather. So we also discussed whether or not we should have a bridge to link the buildings. But when we were consulting with the DC or some other stakeholders, now it's because there are some historic buildings over there. If we do build a bridge, then it will destroy the appearance of the environment. So after all these discussions, it seems that the underground linkage between the buildings is a more attractive option. In terms of transportation, perhaps I'll explain it in this way. We anticipate that most of the people going there will be students. So the most important part is to take care of their transportation needs. We've done a lot of very detailed studies. Actually, I was afraid whether we would increase the transportation in the area in an undesirable level, and we did talk about the transportation department. So perhaps we can have some buses to make sure that the buses won't create traffic jams. But I think that there is a way to solve the problem. Thank you. Do you have any supplementary questions? Yes. If you have an underground linkage, can you still walk between the two buildings above ground? Thank you for your supplementary question. Yes, of course you can. If you look at the diagrams, yes, cars and people can go there. But why do we still need an underground linkage? It's because when you're, let's say, transporting food or other materials, it will be undesirable for them to do it on the road. So that's why we have an underground linkage. Mr. Chan Han Pan. Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the ICC, I welcome its establishment because it will create another career pathway for young people. So I hope that maybe even I can take some courses later. I would like to ask the schools that whether or not will they be developing a restaurant so that students will be allowed to train their real skills in a real-world setting. So perhaps during some times, the public can go there and try the food, and so students can learn from that experience. Second, of course, when you're cooking, there will be exhaust, especially when there's so many students there. Now, will it create an adverse impact on the nearby historic buildings? Yes, Mr. Au. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your question, Mr. Chen. In terms of restaurants, maybe I'll try to answer it this way. As I had said, now, after the students have had a real training, it's part of the training. So that's why in the second floor of this building, there will be a training restaurant, but it will not be open 365 days a year to the public. It's mostly for the students. I think that it can satisfy, as had been mentioned, the needs of the students. But I do agree with you is that we must do something so that students can take the skills in the real world. That is a core aspect of our training. In terms of exhaust, whether or not it will affect the buildings, as mentioned in the papers, and perhaps I will highlight here, is that in terms of exhaust, we have electrostatic participators. So we use electricity to treat the exhaust. And we also have various traps for the grease. This is actually part of our training for the students. We really want the students to learn about these facilities. So there should not be any concern about any adverse impacts on the surrounding areas. Mr. Albert Chen. Now, Chairman, in terms of food and beverages, there's always a concern because in the past there was the previous CE, there were some corruption practices in terms of food and beverages, and then the ICAC commissioner also has some scandals with buying expensive wines and such. Now I see that there is a wine cellar and a wine appreciation room. Now I feel a strong reaction whenever I see these things. Of course, in terms of the concept, there's a reason for its establishment superficially, but do we really need to use $700 million or $200 per meter? There's no explanation about this cost anywhere in the papers, and there's nothing about why do we need to have such a luxurious ICC. What is the actual benefits to Hong Kong? How many students will train? What is the demand for such chefs in Hong Kong in the future? Of course, we know that a lot of Chinese chefs, they start learning at a real world setting. Now, of course, a lot of hotels, they have their own training courses to train the kitchen personnel. So right now in the market, so a lot of times, chefs working right now in the real world don't need this particular courses like these. Now, in terms of policy, in terms of overall running of this, there's no information saying that we should give 700 million to you to do this thing. Can you talk about this, Mr. Au or the Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chen. There will be 2,000 training places, 400 pre-vocational training, 1,600 for serving personnel. In other words, the training is for those who are already in the trade. We just want to upgrade their abilities. So for pre-vocational training and vocational training, it's hoped that we will have people with international culinary skills. Now, I'm running out of time. I hope the government will. Well, I'm sure many. I'm sure this paper will be approved because so many have expressed support. I oppose this paper. But can you give us a whole plan? What you plan to do in the next decade? There are over 1,000 students. What do they do? Are they all local students? Maybe 100% of the research graduates are mainland students, like in the tertiary institutes. What about the market? for Western shelf or Chinese shelf, what is the demand in 5-star hotels and so on. We need some form of assessment to see whether this $700 million will be spent properly. Otherwise, this will become a place for people to taste red wine by the rich and powerful. This is a place where people are invited to have abalone and shark's fin soup. How do you prevent the rich and powerful from abusing these facilities? Like the ICC commissioner, he drinks only Mao Tai and other expensive wine. So give us a paper. Mr. Alan Leung. Every time a paper is submitted to the PWSC, for every item, there will be stated in the paper section on financial implications. There are always two items. One is the contingency item. The other is the provision for price adjustment. Contingencies usually kept within 7 to 8% of the total budget, but for provision for price adjustment, the percentage could vary quite substantially. For example, the first paper is about 20%. This paper, 13.9%, 14%. So for these two items that are always in the financial implications, how are they worked out? Is there anything to go by? Thank you. I was going to convene a meeting soon so that the government departments could explain to members how they work up prices for each project and what the current system is. That is, on what basis or in working out the calculation to tell you how much a project would cost and how much it would cost for contingencies, the funds required, and so on. Now, since you've asked this question, I wonder who could answer it. Ms. Lang, please. A brief reply, perhaps. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Leung. The contingencies usually is about 10% of the project estimate. But of course, in exceptional cases, there may be uncertain factors involving project. In that case, the contingencies may exceed 10%. The contingencies are to cater for unforeseen factors in the course of construction. For example, it's found out in the foundation there is some form of obstruction, and so there's need to vary for variation of order, and so we need contingencies to cater for that. And provision for price adjustment, it depends on the length of the construction program, because there is inflation. If the program spans over a longer period, we have price adjustment mechanism, and the price adjustment factor is based on the percentage given by the Treasury. Well, Mr. Chairman, since you plan to call a special meeting for the administration to explain these things to us, yes, I think it's good. But initially, looking at the two papers for the two items today, for the first item and this item, they have similar construction program. But the provision for price adjustment, in one case is 20%, the other is 14%. There's a difference of 6%. It seems that it's just up to them to cook up the figures. There's nothing to go by. I hope that's not the case, of course. Perhaps I'll wait for you to organize that meeting, Mr. Chairman. I'll see if I'm happy with the answers, but I'll stop here for now. Now, for the nature of the project, the size of the project, of course, these factors vary. That's why the contingencies will be different. Mr. Michael Tian speaking for the second time, 3 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, let me draw on this some more. Now, in the 2011 policy address, the Chief Executive announced the ICC, and of course, In the panel, there was discussion in 2008, 2009, but at the time I wasn't a member of this council. Of course, I didn't get a chance to speak. I tried to see what was discussed. At the time, there was no discussion of what would happen to the talents trained. That seems to be the government's approach all along. $700 million. If it's a 5% return, that's not too much to ask for, is it? If you invest $700 million into anything, 5% return, that means $35 million a year. $35 million, they tell us there are 2,000 places, 1,600 places to upgrade the skills of serving personnel. So $20,000 per person a year then. But to upgrade what? We are not told. They have a job already. So you invest $20,000 in that person to upgrade what skills of his? Of course, it's because you want them to start their own business eventually. We're not talking about building railways, lines, or aircrafts. Catering is the easiest way for anyone to start a business from small, and it will help to promote development in Hong Kong. That echoes with what Madam Chen Yun-han said. All along, the VTC has many well-intended courses. They train many talents, but there's no response whatsoever from the CEDB. And what happens? When these people are trained, then they may move on to the employees retraining board, so they could switch to a different trade because they couldn't find work in what they've been trained for. So there's a huge problem here. Now, next time, when they come to the Finance Committee, I Madam Chen I share Madam Chen Yuhan's demand. That is that there must be a response from the CGB. We talk about 1,600 serving personnel. You invest $20,000 in each of them. What do you help them to do? And would there be any measures to help them start their own businesses eventually? If not, whenever the Finance Committee considers any projects on training talents, I will probably abstain from voting every time, because if that's the case, the government will never change its mindset. So I hope at the Finance Committee meeting, the SCED would give us a positive response. Now, the item was discussed at the panel on education on the 14th of January this year. You are not a member of the education panel, Mr. Tan. Maybe that's why you didn't take part in the discussion. Maybe you didn't have any background information, that's why. Did they ever talk about development of the industry? Now, I'm not a member of the panel as well. I agree. We should ask the Education Bureau. Development of international culinary arts and the career path of the graduates. Of course, the maybe the Labour and Welfare Bureau is also involved. So, Deputy Secretary, please go back to the two relevant bureau and ask them for more information on how they could help graduates from these courses to find work, what opportunities are in store for them, and so on. In particular, you know, how they can start their own businesses. That's the most important, Mr. Chairman. Okay, thank you. Mr. Leung Sing, the last to speak. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask about energy conservation. Hot water supply. Are you using solar energy? Paragraph 30, recycled features. Here is mentioned rainwater collection for irrigation. How do you plan to use it for irrigation, really? Who could answer that, please? Mr. Ao? Mr. Chairman, can I take Mr. M's second question first? The recycle features for rainwater collection. So on the rooftop, there will be some devices. It's more part of our training, so people could know that they could collect rainwater for such purposes. So these are devices installed on the rooftop. To irrigate what? Irrigate what? I suppose plants or greening in the area. Can I defer to my colleagues? Well, in the college, we may have some plants, so that will be for the irrigation of plants. What about solar energy? Will you have solar systems? For hot water, for culinary school. Now we have steamers. Already we could recycle the heat for heating hot water. This system, the solar system is not for hot water supply. You're still providing hot water by the conventional means, electricity or gas, right? Correct. Or coal. Yes, correct. Okay, no other questions. Those in favor of the item, hands up, please. Those against, hands up, please. I think I believe the item is approved. Okay, members, we have dealt with all the items on the agenda today. For these two items considered, they will be tabled. They will be presented to the Finance Committee on the 12th of July. Members, do you wish to ask for a separate voting on any items that we considered today? No? Thank you. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.